Fox and the Head Boot. This is being recorded March 12th, 2019. The occurrence was fall session of outdoor school 1971. The location was Nate Creek Outdoor School Camp, and this involved Fox, a senior counselor at the camp, also known as Wiley Somerville. It involved Tadger, another senior staff member, also known as Jim Mockford, and myself, Cletus, also known as Jack Lynch, another senior staff member. At Nate Creek, there was a large cabin. It was on the other side of the dining hall from where all the students and counselors stayed in their cabins. This was off to itself. In the lower floor, it housed a room for Rhoda. There was a room and office for Digger, and there was a room and office for the camp nurse. Upstairs, there was a full loft. The roof was, well, two-sided, leaning, sort of. There was an outdoor staircase that went up to the loft there. Inside the loft, on the west side, there's a row of bunks. On the east side, there's a row of bunks along the wall, and in the very back, there was a wall and a room back there, and that's where the resource specialist lived. The rest of us that were senior staff members, males, of course, we stayed upstairs. Fox had his bed on the east side of the loft. My bed was directly across from his on the west side. And just south of Fox there, about one bunk down, was Tadger. Now, Fox was an individual who thought he was privileged. His daddy was the superintendent of Multnomah Intermediate Education District. And that was the big government agency that owned and ran outdoor schools. He was about a year older than us. He'd done outdoor school a little bit longer, one or two sessions more than us, and he considered himself the top dog, certainly better than any of us, which gave us good reason to have some fun with him. He was kind of, I don't know what you'd say, he's sort of stiff. Didn't relax too easily. In any case, what got to us after several weeks was that Fox would go to bed early. Counselors don't do that. He'd be up there and he'd be asleep when we'd finally get done with our job, our work, and come upstairs. He'd be snoring away, just sleeping there. We decided to have a little fun with him. That was Tadger and myself. We got a little eyelet, one of those little shiny chromium eyelets with a screw on it that you can screw in and hang things on. In the ceiling above Fox, we screwed that eyelet in. Fortunately, the inside there was all wood. It was rustic, like a cabin. We screwed it in right up above where his head was. So it was, I don't know, six feet above his head. And we did this during the daytime while he was busy on study plot. We put some fishing line up and through that eyelet and back down again and tied one of his boots onto it. Fox didn't wear boots usually. He wore sneakers. The rest of us that had to work wore boots every day. So we tied the string, or the fishing line, onto Fox's boot, tucked that boot back around by the headboard of his bunk there, and took the rest of that fishing line and moved it on back down towards Tadger's bed. So Tadger could grab that line and pull it, and the boot would go up in the air and come down. So that night, we came back to the cabin area there, and there was Fox snoring away, just having a wonderful sleep. And I took some fishing line and tied it onto that boot and took it over to where I was in my bed. Tadger was in bed. It was sleeping bag pulled up. I was in bed, sleeping bag pulled up. Tadger raised that boot up all the way up to the eyelet. And he dropped it down on top of Fox. And then he pulled it back up all the way to the ceiling. Fox sort of came out of his stupor, looked around, and was trying to figure out what had happened. You know, he'd just been mashed on the side of the head. There the boot stayed. He didn't see it. It was dark in there. Barely enough light to see what's going on. And so Fox went back to sleep pretty quickly. I tied a fishing line onto that boot and took it in my hot little hands and from my bunk, and Tadger lowered the boot back down near Fox's head. I pulled the boot back, swung it back. Tadger lowered it just a little bit, and I pulled that boot way back and then let the string go, and that boot swung right on in and clobbered Fox right up the side of the head. And then Tadger pulled the boot back up, and there we lay in our bunks, sleeping away, or looking like it anyway. And Fox, startled, mad, looking all over. He knew someone done something to him, but he didn't know what. And we lay there just biting our tongues to keep from laughing because it was great. It seemed like it took almost half hour for Fox to finally calm down. We were sure that he was faking his being asleep in the hopes we'd do something and he'd catch us. We waited. And it was sometime after 1 o'clock in the morning that he was back to that soundful sleeping sound. Snoring, snorting, all kinds of stuff. And Tadger lowered that boot back down. I pulled the boot back again. This time I gave it a good solid pull so it swung way back and just clobbered the crap out of him in the head. Tadger pulled it all the way up. This time Fox was yelling, screaming, going into conniption fits. We didn't say anything. We didn't move. He's just doing this stuff. We waited and waited and waited. It seemed like 45 minutes almost went by before he started calming down. At that point, I got up. Tadger lowered the boot down. I set it back down underneath his bunk, and we pulled the strings back through and cut them off with my knife. There's a little bit of string left on his boot, a couple pieces there, just short couple-inch pieces. The rest of that stuff was gone. We didn't say a word about it. We just let Fox go on. He was pretty quiet in the morning trying to figure out what was going on. Any case, a week or so goes by, and this is one of those rare occasions where Fox actually put on his boots and wore them. That was when he found the short stubs of string on there and didn't say anything. We still don't know if he figured it out or if he was just being quiet in the hopes of coaxing us to admit it. But we just let that lay.